Western countries are imposing sanctions on Russia following the country's move to recognize two separatist regions in Ukraine. Now, US, Canada, European Union, Germany, Britain and Japan have imposed these sanctions against Russia, while Australia will be imposing sanctions immediately now. US President Joe Biden has also cut off Russia from the Western financing and has imposed sanctions on Russian elite. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has also called off a planned meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. In fact, while Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has also announced an economic sanction on Russia. The sanctions also come in as Russia recognized the two separatist regions in Ukraine as independents yesterday. These are fresh sanctions that have been imposed on Russia. It's not just coming from the US. Now more and more countries are joining in. The European Union, so to speak, also Germany, Britain, Japan, all of them have joined in imposing fresh sanctions against Moscow. In fact, Australia will be doing so too immediately. Now this has happened after US President Joe Biden has cut off Russia from the Western financing and also imposed sanctions on the Russian elite. Also, fresh financial sanctions have come in from Canada, and now we are being told that Australia is going to be following suit. Amid various sanctions on Russia over the Ukrainian crisis, now Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that Western brokered peace agreement is no longer existent. In fact, Putin added that deployment of troops to Ukraine depends on the situation on the ground and that it's best if Ukraine drops NATO bid and adopts neutrality. Strategic affairs expert Maroof Raza now joins me on the broadcast. Maroof, Russia, in fact, is defiant. They're sticking with that stand that there should be no NATO inclusion as far as Ukraine is concerned. However, all the countries, including the UN, in fact, EU, uniting to actually impose these fresh sanctions against Russia.
See, Russia has been living with sanctions for several years now. As you are aware, there's something called CARTSA, which was put into place in President Trump's time, essentially to ensure that countries don't buy Russian-made products, primarily weapon systems. That apart, there has been a gradual wall between the West and Russia that has been drawn up over the years in terms of where there would be any engagement at all with Russia. Now, the current situation, both sides, I'm sure, have done a lot of homework on what they can achieve by putting pressure on the other side. But these sanctions per se from the US-led group of Western countries will work only up to a point, because sanctions studies have shown only work when the whole world unites in imposing the same sanctions against a country. If you go back in history, the case of South Africa is a case in point. When eventually Britain also joined the chorus against South Africa after sanctions and isolation of South Africa was promoted for years and years by many countries, only when the whole Western community and the powerful rich countries came up against South Africa that South Africa turned around and we then saw black rule. In terms of Russia, Russia has 2 or 3 very strong assets up its sleeve. Military power apart, it is the largest exporter of oil and gas outside the OPEC, and OPEC, as you know, is the body that controls oil and gas prices. So therefore, Russian products are number 2, number 3, not only in China, but in Japan, in South Korea, in other Southeast Asian countries, and 40% of Europe's gas is dependent on Russian supplies. Now, if further sanctions are tightened on Russia, I wouldn't be surprised if Russia stops the supply of oil and gas to Europe, and that is going to be very, very traumatizing for European citizens.
Right.